Right. 080918 is a request for discussion of business licensing issues regarding bird scooters put forth by Robert Burgett, our finance director. My question is there anyone here to speak to that matter? I had gotten contacted. Yes, if you will, come forward, give your name and where your current address is. Better yet, let's start with having you sign in right here.
Thank you.
And I did make the commitment that I would allow this gentleman to speak, so. Sorry.
18. Yes, sir. Thank you.
And forgive me, tell us again, your name is?
Yes, hi, Servando Esparza.
Pronounce
Can
your
you hear
last
me?
name for me again?
Servando Esparza.
Esparza.
Esparza,
Okay.
E-S-P-A-R-Z-A.
Yes, go ahead.
Do I need to tell my address?
Tell your story.
My story. Mayor, council
Succinctly.
president, city council members, my name is Servando Esparza. I'm the senior manager of government relations for Bird in the southeast region of the United States. The Bird provides a fleet of low-speed electric scooters that give people an affordable, reliable, and fun way to get around town while helping cities solve the problems of traffic, parking, the first and last mile, and carbon emissions. So how Bird works, how these scooters work, is that they're deployed in what we call nests, and usually there's about 3 Bird scooters per nest. They're placed around town in locations where there's wide enough sidewalk or there's already bike parking. Ideal locations where you're not going to be blocking any sidewalk or the what we call the pedestrian right of way. I hope you guys can still hear me if I'm not there. So how this works is that a user downloads an app, creates an account. A Bird can be located through the app. It'll show you a map, and then each of the Bird scooters has GPS on it. Once you create an account, scan your ID to prove that you're over 18. Then you can scan the barcode that's on the actual scooter and then take it for a ride. It's $1 to unlock and 20 cents per minute. In the United States, what we've seen is most of our rides are about 1.5 miles. Typically, what the space that we work in is it's too far for someone to walk, but it's too short for someone to drive or take an Uber or Lyft. The launch in Birmingham and Homewood was a part of what we call the University Pop-Up Tour. It was to gauge interest and provide this alternative transportation option for college students and then communities with universities, because they tend to have a lot of density. As you can imagine, college students are some of our earliest adopters, and somehow a lot of times those individuals either live on campus or don't have a vehicle the first few years, so this is a really good option that we've seen in other places. And we were encouraged by the high level of interest by residents and of Homewood, and that's why we applied for a business license after we launched, which I'll address in just a second. I would like to add that Bird is committed to safety. Our scooters have a max speed of 15 miles per hour. That's wishful thinking on my part. On the level surface. And then we, of course, on the app itself, we remind our users to always wear helmets. We do offer free helmets just at pop-up events. And if someone asks for one through the app, we'll ship them one for just $1.99. That they just pay the shipping and handling. And then one of the things that's special to our specific company is that we have what we call Save Our Streets Pledge, which consists of 3 points. One is that we give every city we operate $1 per vehicle per day to help them run safety campaigns. Ultimately, it's whatever the city wants to do with it, but we think investing back in bike lanes and those kind of programs would make a lot of sense. I'll note that this is on top of the taxes that would already normally be paid. We just think it's important for us to invest in locations where we would love to see more bike lanes appear. 2, Bird scooters collected every single night. So essentially, because they're electric scooters, they have to be charged overnight. So every night about 8 o'clock, we'll have people come pick them up. up, and then they're distributed back into the nest that I was talking about by about 7 o'clock in the morning. So they're useful for the whole day. And then the third is that we have responsible growth, which is what we think is important about a program like this, right? We don't want to saturate the market with too many birds. What we do is we don't increase the number of birds until we have at least 3 rides per bird per day on average for a week. That tells us there's enough demand that's safe for us to grow. We also pull back the number of birds if we just see 1 ride per scooter per day on average for a week. That tells us that where folks aren't riding, either it's winter for whatever reason. I would like to just end with saying I know that there's frustration. I've heard from several members about the fact that we launched without notification. That's why I'm here to say when we apologize, and when I would love to work with you guys on a program. I think ultimately it's important to potentially have a program like this. I think the potential is here. It's a great town. You have great residents that would love to have this kind of alternative option in this town. So I hope that you guys consider implementing a program here in Homewood. So I'm open to answer any questions.
Okay, I think we probably have several questions.
Of course.
Are you looking at me?
I am looking at you.
I do have some questions, actually.
Absolutely.
First of all, it was a bit of a shock to be driving to work and have suddenly scooters cluttering our sidewalks. And I will say that, we don't typically appreciate people coming to get their business licenses after they've already launched their businesses. People typically do that the right way, which is come to us beforehand, and also get the correct permits that you need to have. I'd like to know how y'all make sure that people under 18 don't drive the scooters, because I have to say, on the day that you have put them out without permission, several of us saw people riding the scooters who were not 18 years old.
Yeah, absolutely. So like I mentioned, in order to have the first rental, you have to scan either a driver's license or an ID to prove that you're 18. What we see is that some parents will let their children use it. And for us, we don't have we don't have an immediate shutdown for that. But what we do is if someone reports it and lets us know, hey, I saw this individual in this corner. If you have any other details to provide, we'll take them. And the first time we'll provide a warning to say, hey, this is actually not allowed under the user agreement. It's actually not safe. Most of the times there's actually laws that say that the minor has to be wearing a helmet. And so the parent is also in violation of that. And so if it happens again, if we get another report, then we could shut down their account, because their account is linked to their phone number, email, and we've also scanned their ID. It's impossible for them to recreate another account.
Okay, and then you also mentioned the helmets, and that you'll ship them to somebody for $1.99, which is great, except that doesn't really help with the person who's actually on the scooter at the time that they're riding it without a helmet. So if they fall and crack their head open, getting a helmet in the mail 2 weeks later probably doesn't help. So other than just telling people safety tips, is there any kind of thought process as to how you can regulate the safety of these scooters? Because people can ride them in the streets. Are they street legal even?
Yes, and so it sort of depends on the local community, depending on if they want to keep them in the sidewalks, if they allow anywhere in the sidewalks. Throughout the U.S., it kind of differs, and there's municipalities that only want them on the sidewalks. Either they don't have bike lanes, or they prefer that. Other places only on the street. I think it just kind of depends on the municipality and what the infrastructure is in place and kind of the topography. In terms of the point you made about what we can do, the thing we can do is about the warnings that I was telling you about. This also doesn't preclude any person from getting a violation for violating the law. Right? If someone's using one of these scooters and disregards a stop sign or is just being reckless, that person is still liable, but at the same time, a police officer could stop them for using a vehicle in an improper way. Internally, what we're doing is we're setting up tools which are, I'll admit, not there yet, but one of the points that we're doing is, like I was telling you, you can report someone. We're trying to make it easier when the app itself, if an individual has no desire to ever use the Bird app itself for the scooter, but you can use a Bird app, and then you would still see the map of the birds that are there, and you could say, there's an individual across the street who has, their kid using the scooter instead of that person, the person could get on the app, point to that one, and then report that user. And so it's more of a real-time reporting that we're able to provide. I think that provides us the most up-to-date information instead of getting a report in either email, phone call. They would need to track is one
But
of
you're
the.
essentially putting the burden of safety on other people to report to y'all, as opposed to, as a company, being proactive and putting safety controls in place.
That's more of an enforcement piece. On the front end, there's a series of about 8 slides that you must go through in order to have your first ride. Then I think the 9th one is either local rules. That's if the city itself decides to have specific rules, like I was talking about the sidewalks or no sidewalks. We have places that say, like, the business district, you can't use sidewalks. That's the place we would put the local rules. But it says always wear a helmet, only one person per use, no kids under 18. Those reminders have to go through before you use it on the first time.
But there's no way to enforce them at the time. I mean, you can say, I'm 18, or I'm going to do this, or I'm going to do that, but essentially there's nothing that actually enforces that.
Well, that's the carrot and the stick. The stick part is the tickets, the no longer being able to
Right, but
use
that's on our
the app
police
stuff.
department.
Or on the enforcement of no longer letting them use the app itself is on us. I mean,
Okay. Anybody?
Mr. President.
That's right, please.
Yeah, I'll be glad to say so. Respectfully, I think you guys really, I understand your mistake on your business license, which was incredibly unprofessional. I mean, I just can't, that type of mistake, it's not, you can't just be flippant about that as an oversight. I mean, you're putting danger in people's hands, and you come back and you say, well, we forgot to get a business license. And respectfully, you got your cart before the horse. Okay, so you need to send this up the chain to your folks, because when the bikes come in, which I assume you're following their model where all the bikes are docking and everybody's riding the bikes, and it seems like you're following the same locales that have those. They came in and they did studies. They came in and they did communications. They came in and provided information, and they actually asked us if we wanted to do this. You guys aren't doing that. You need to consider running your business in that type of way, and you wouldn't have all of these type of complaints, which I can only imagine is going on nationwide. And what if somebody gets hurt? What if somebody gets, a child who, heaven forbid, has a fake ID, gets through it? Well, he may not get to use it again. Well, that's great enforcement while he's sitting in the hospital. I mean, do you guys have indemnity agreements, or is that what you guys do to protect yourselves?
so we provide indemnity agreements with the cities itself so that the city is not liable for anything that occurs on a scooter.
How do you guys protect yourselves?
So I'm not an attorney, so I can't explain all that. My understanding from explaining to cities is that typically if
He
there's...
is.
I'm sorry?
He is.
Yeah, so I'm sure you can teach me a lot more. Essentially, it's like if someone is reckless on their own and has nothing to do with the scooter itself, then that person still remains, liable for any of those unlawful actions. But other than that, I don't know. In the month that I've been at Bird, I've not heard of any city. I know, so I don't know of any cities that have had any of these specific issues where there's liability placed on the city itself for operations.
Mr. Kendrick?
Yeah, I want to be very cordial about this, but I've done a good bit of research. In fact, I'm a member of a working group for international municipal attorneys, and your business plan all over the country has been exactly what you did here. You just show up at night, you drop scooters. I mean, it's everywhere. There's an article published, I'll send to you in the most recent Emblem magazine about your industry. Now, it's not just you, but it is your industry, although you're a smaller player in the industry. Apparently, it's international, mostly Chinese-owned. Mm-hmm. But to be quite honest with you, we need to have a moratorium of any type of this business until we develop some rules and regulations. This is a new transportation business. It is a new model, just like Uber was when we developed rules. Now the state has adopted a policy and procedure. There needs to be indemnity. You've had working agreements all over the country, most recently in Memphis that I can find in the last couple of weeks. So we need to develop a policy, procedure, rules and regulations that certainly benefits the public and you as also. We're not trying to exclude a business, but we do need to have some rules and regulations. But to be quite candid with you, it's your business plan to go in and do exactly what you did in Birmingham. You've done it all over the country. And it's reported by just numerous 50 different cities criticizing what's been happening in this industry. And we don't need to let that happen here. We do need to have in place reasonable rules and regulations that protects the city, protects all those folks who use your scooters. And it might be very attractive, and we're certainly open for that, I think personally. But there's some things we need to do before you're authorized to do business, is my recommendation to the city.
All right, excuse me, Mr. White.
Well, and to Mr. Kendrick's point, those indemnity agreements don't do us any good if you just drop off the scooters. You haven't signed, we haven't entered any indemnity agreements. So those are irrelevant at this point. If you're going to drop off 40 scooters or whatever it was without an indemnity agreement, if there's a need for the indemnity agreement, why aren't you coming to us beforehand to do that? Secondly, where exactly does it say that you have to be 18 to ride one of these scooters when you get on the app?
On the safety outlines, the 8 different pages, and then on
Well,
the
I
app.
just downloaded your app, and I'm going through those 8 pages, and I see how to find and unlock. I see safe riding, bring your own helmet, how to start it, where to place both feet, ride in bike lanes, brakes to slow down, don't block public pathways, how to stop the ride. I don't see anything about 18.
So before you take your first ride, you have to scan an ID, and it gives you the requirements there before that. You're not allowed to scan one of the scooters and then lock it. That's when it requires that.
Okay, so once you put in your information, it tells you no one under 18 is supposed to ride it.
You cannot unlock a scooter with your account until your ID or some form of identification has gone through review and it proves that you're 18.
I understand that. I guess what I'm asking is, do you ever tell parents not to let their children ride it, or do you assume that if someone's put in a thing that they've handled it?
I've got to double check on that notification that goes in front, but I believe it's pretty thorough about the 18 years of age.
Well, do any council members have any other questions?
I just have one question.
Okay, Mr. Jones first, I'm sorry.
Okay, I'm so sorry.
Yeah, my question is just on the street legal. So you're saying that these are street legal?
They're not.
I know what street legal is because we've dealt with this on other situations.
Golf carts.
Right. So that's not a true statement, is it? They're not
No,
street legal.
On street legal we operate in a bunch of areas throughout the U.S., and now I was answering on that. On the Alabama law, I have to defer to someone else different.
I guess that's the point of what we're making is that you should know what the laws are before you come in and say, well, you can ride it on the street or you can ride it on the sidewalk. So kind of same type situation there.
Mr. Wright.
I had one question. And you're in charge of the Southeast operations?
Of government relations for the Southeast.
Government relations.
Not operations.
Where, do you guys have any local representatives in the state of Alabama, or
Not at this point.
Where are you from?
I'm from Texas.
From Texas? Okay, all right, thank you.
Your company's out of California?
Yes, sir.
Yeah. Were you a part of the agreement that you just reached with Memphis in the last couple of weeks?
No, sir.
Well,
The same thing happened in Memphis. Memphis enjoined them from producing impounded vehicles. And then they came up with an interim agreement that you're working under presently, as far as I can read.
Mr. Kendrick, the council needs a little guidance here.
Well, I need some myself, because this is relatively new, and I would say it would take some work, certainly from the industry. I am participating in a group of lawyers all over the country that are working on this industry about some rules and regulations. They're not in place yet, but there is a working group we call once a month on the phone to talk about these issues. So I'm not prepared tonight to give you a proposal, but I do think we need to work on this, if we're going to consider this before we allow them or anyone else with a similar type business to come in and operate in the city.
I agree. Mr. Jones?
I was just going to say, I mean, a moratorium would probably be the appropriate motion, have a moratorium while we're working on this.
I think
and
60
then
days
have-
would be a fair amount to see where we are. If not sooner, I'm not trying to delay things, but honestly, this is a very new enterprise throughout the country, and we don't need to recreate the wheel, but we need to learn from other people's experiences that maybe in bigger cities you've been in place longer, California particularly, San Francisco, from what I can read. But there is some help and guidance that maybe we can benefit from other cities that have had these, I guess, proposals made and certainly benefit from them. I know Memphis is the latest one like that last week in August that I could find.
Are all the scooters impounded now? There's nothing on the street currently?
I don't know.
There's one, the little donkey.
I can say that our police department and Mr. Cook impounded all of the scooters that were in public right-of-way. If they were on private property, we couldn't do that. But I believe there was 38, is that right, in your office? 51, okay. So. Okay, they came and looked at
As in, the company has come to retrieve the ones that have been impounded?
Yeah, they did the same thing in Birmingham, I
Right.
believe.
Right.
Well, and Tuscaloosa as well.
Okay, good. Mayor, you had your hand up.
So just in fairness, let me just say that I met with Servando a little earlier this afternoon and beat him up a little bit before he got to y'all. So I think for tonight, based on what I had told him, there was really no way that we're going to go forward with this business until some things are able to be done to accommodate people. But one of the things that I did tell him is I felt like that you as a council was progressive and forward-thinking, and that we would certainly consider alternative transportation. I mean, we're a city that's been selected as the most walkable city in the state for the last 3 years. We're investing heavily in sidewalks, bike lanes. That is relatively new concept for us. So we're not opposed to different kinds of transportations and those kind of things. But as far as it happening tonight, I would not be in favor of that. But I do feel like if however long it takes, that we are open to at least looking at it again. And if it works for us and it's something that our residents want, great. If it's not, then it just won't work here. So I think you've kind of proven exactly, with your attitude about it as kind of what I explained to him before the meeting that most likely would happen. So he can correct me if he feels any differently on it. So.
Mayor, with any business model, you start with, is there a need or even a demand? And to my knowledge, I hadn't heard from anyone that they were particularly interested in this. Now, y'all may have, and Jennifer, you
Well,
have.
I was going to say, I did after the events of last week, I did have a few people reach out to me and express interest. And I did tell one resident that we didn't have time this month to take this up with budget hearings. So I think 60 days, I promised that I would look at it once we were through passing our budget. And so I think 60 days is fair for us to look at it after we get through.
Okay. Well, if that's the
Whatever
case,
timeframe is
hey,
there.
are you making a proposal, Mr. Jones, on the 60 days, or motion?
Yeah, I was going to move to have a moratorium for 60 days and have a committee work with Mr. Kendrick on drafting some type of proposal that we could vote on and enact.
Okay.
Mr. President, I wanted to add just one remark. While the deployment was poor, execution not so good, I do think it is a positive, like the mayor said, for us to consider this, because I think it's a catalyst for us to drive bike lanes further into our neighborhoods, to have a more, I guess, amenable or, platform for the scooters to get around. I look at it kind of like a bike, There's individual responsibility when you get on a bike, so there's a similar thing here, but y'all have some constraints you have to work with being a business and being responsible for the deployment of that. But I don't want us to close our minds to this, because I think it's a good option, and the market will determine if there's no demand for it, and they'll have to basically pick them up and take them somewhere else.
All right, thank you, sir. Is there a second to Mr. Jones's motion?
I'll second that.
Second from Ms. Andrus. Well, okay. We agreed to let this one gentleman talk about this. This is not a public hearing, but this is not a public hearing. I'm sorry. It may become yet a public hearing, but certainly for this 60 days, we'll look at options and possibilities.
Mr. Limbaugh?
Yes.
To the industry, or to the bird folks, you have rules and regulations you want to propose or submit, please do that. I mean, you've had this problem other places, I know. So give us the benefit of what you might have worked out with those folks. We're starting from scratch, and we can develop rules, but if you have some you want to propose, we'd certainly look at them.
All right. All in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Okay, so be it. Yes, okay. Go ahead and come forward and Mr. Cook,
I just want to make one.
as city employee.
Serrano and I met this afternoon, and correct me if I'm wrong, if he hasn't already, he's going to get word out to the chargers not to put any more of these out in the city.
Good.
But we do have some on private property that we don't control. We do have adjoining city, Birmingham, that may still have them. I don't know their situation. So you might come into the city and see some left here from driving from other places. So, don't make a quick assumption that they're back in business and not following the
Well,
moratorium.
If they have GPS, they have the ability to know where they are.
Oh, sure.
Why don't you pick them up?
They will.
In the City of Homewood,
That night,
anyway.
the chargers will pick them up and they'll go again, yeah.
Yeah, so the nest I was talking about, where we put them out, there's no nest in Homewood anymore, so none should be here
Yeah,
unless
I just
someone
don't want you
decides
to,
to ride.
tomorrow morning you get out and someone run one into Homewood and park it by Dawson again or something.
If we see one tomorrow based on Mr. Jones's motion and the vote of the council, then I would expect you to pick those up, and then Servando can pick them up.
All right, thank you. I appreciate it. And I would say to anyone who is here on this matter, as Mr. Gwaltney said, we're going to stay open-minded on this, and we'll look at options and possibilities. But I would say with any issue within the city, we certainly relish folks letting us know if they feel positively about this. In 60 days, I think will give us that time to get a better read on that. Let's move on to the next item.